All right, today we're going to be working on number 5 quadratic notes, finding solutions by graphing. So solutions are zeros or are x-intercepts, and that's where the graph crosses the x-axis. So go ahead and put in x in that spot right there. And then these are parabolas. Parabolas are those kind of upside down or right side up U shapes. Can have 0. So we're going to put 0 here. That is really thick. That's not any thinner. 0, 1, or 2 x-intercepts. Okay, so let's look at this first one. We have y equals x squared plus 4x plus 3. Okay, if you remember back, when we start with these, we always find our axis of symmetry, and that's where our x equals opposite b divided by 2 times our a value. Okay, so this one I'm going to say x equals, right now my b value is well, let's just label these. My a equals 1, my b equals 4, and my c equals 3. Okay, so I'm going to say x equals opposite b. So my b value is a positive 4, so I'm going to do the opposite, so negative 4. Divided by 2, that's part of the formula, that's always there, times my a value, which is 1. So negative 4 is still going to stay at negative 4. 2 times 1 is 2. If I have negative 4 divided by 2, I get negative 2. So my x equals negative 2. Remember, we put that right in the middle. So I'm going to put that negative 2 in the middle of that section. And then I'm going to go 2 below that, negative 3, negative 4, and 2 above that, negative 1, 0. Okay, so we found all our x's. Now we're looking for our y's. And we can find our y's by filling in our x in the 2 spots that have an x spot. So I'm going to start y equals, I'm going to start with that axis of symmetry, that middle piece right there. I'm going to say y equals, it starts with an x squared, so I'm going to put my x in, that negative 2, squared plus 4, parentheses, negative 2, plus 3. Okay, if I put all of that in my calculator, I get a negative 1. Okay, now I'm going to change that negative 2 to a negative 3. So I'm going to say y equals negative 3 squared plus 4, negative 3 plus 3. If I put all that in, I get a 0. And remember, it has this rainbow effect. So if that one's a 0, this one's a 0. And lastly, I'm going to put my last one in there. Y equals negative 4 squared plus 4, negative 4 plus 3. If I do that one, I get a 3 on my outside. And remember that rainbow effect, if this one's a 3, this one's a 3. So I'm going to put 3's in both places. Now I'm just going to go ahead and graph that. So the first one I'm going to do is 0, 3. So I'm starting at 0, 0. Okay, right in the middle, the origin, and I'm going to go up 3 because I'm 0 and going up 3 and put a dot. Okay, now I want negative 1 is 0. So I'm going to go left 1, and then I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay right there. And now I want negative 2, so I'm going from the origin, I'm going left 2, and then it's a negative 1, so down 1. Okay, now I want left 3, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right there. And then left 4, and then up 3. Okay, and then I'm just going to go ahead and connect those. So there's my parabola right there. Okay, now it's asking for my x-intercepts. Okay, well that's where it crosses the x-axis. So right there. So when I'm looking where it crosses the x-axis, it crosses right here and it crosses right there. So I'm going to say x equals, and the 2 numbers that it equals. So x equals, one of the numbers it's crossing is a negative 3. And another number it's crossing at is a negative 1. So x equals negative 3 and negative 1. And you can also find those anywhere your y is a 0, that's your x. So my y was a 0 right here. Nope, sorry, that's not a y is a 0. Let's try that again. My y is a 0 right here, so then I'm going to take this x. Or my y is a 0 right here, so I'm going to take that x. So my x-intercepts are going to be negative 3 and negative 1. Okay, let's try number 2, doing that same thing. So I'm going to start the same way with my axis of symmetry, the line that goes right down the middle. I'm going to say x equals, and I'm going to look, my A is that 0.5, my B is a 2, and my C is a 3. So I'm going to take my opposite of my B, which is going to be a -2, divided by 2 times my A value, which is a 0.5. Okay, -2 is staying in -2. If I do 2 times 0.5 in my calculator, I get a 1. -2 divided by 1 is -2. So I'm going to put -2 in my table, and then -3, -4, -1, 0. Okay. Now that I have that, I'm going to go ahead and use my my equation, which is right here, and I'm going to fill in my x's. It's going to make the most sense to do my bottom 3 because they're all negative, so I don't have to worry about trying to get rid of those in my calculator. So I'm going to say y equals 0.5. I'm going to start with my -2 squared plus 2 parentheses -2 plus 3. If I put all that in my calculator, I get a 1. I'm going to do it again with my -3. So y equals 0.5, -3 squared plus 2, -3 plus 3, and I get 1.5. And then I'm going to do that same with the -4. But remember, if that one's 1.5, this one is also 1.5. So I can fill that in right away. And my last one, y equals 0.5, -4 squared plus 2, -4 plus 3. If I put all those in, I get a 3. So I'm going to put a 3 here and a 3 here. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and graph those. So I'm going to start in the middle at my origin at 0, 0. And the first one is 0, 3. So 0 means I'm not going anywhere. I'm just starting in the middle and I'm going up 3. So there's my first one. Now I want -1, so left 1, up 1.5. So 1 would be that first line, and it's 1.5, so it's going to be between the first and the second line. Okay, -2, 1, so -2 up to 1, -3, 1.5, and -4, 3. Okay, so that looks like a pretty good parabola to me. Okay, so now remember that it's when your x values or x equals cross this line. When you're looking at that, is there anything that's touching that line? Well, in the picture, it doesn't look so. So let's go back to our table. Remember, our x-intercept is where our y is at a 0. So when I look at any of these, do any of those have a 0 on them? They don't. So our our x-intercepts are going to be none. It doesn't have anywhere. It doesn't cross that line, and none of our y values are 0, so that one's going to be none. And really, if you don't have any in your y value that are a 0, your picture shouldn't show that, and vice versa. If your picture doesn't cross that line, then your table shouldn't show anything with a 0 in the y value. Okay, let's try number 3. Oops. Okay, we always start the same, where I say x equals opposite b divided by 2 times a. And I'm going to say my a, b's, and c's. So my a is 1, my b is -4, and my c is 4. Oh, sorry, it's a +4. This should be a +4. Don't take the opposite yet. Okay, so x equals opposite b. It was a +4, so now it's going to be a -4. Divided by 2 is the formula, and 1 is my a value. So -4 divided by 2, and I get -2. I'm sensing a theme on this one. -2, -3, -4, -1, 0. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and use those x's, and I'm going to put them in right here in my y's. So I'm going to say y equals, I'm going to start with my -2, -2 squared plus 4, -2 plus 4. If I put all that in, I'm getting a 0. Now I'm going to try that -3, so y equals -3 squared plus 4, -3 plus 4. And then I get a 1, so I'm going to put 1 in both my spots. And now I'm going to try it with a -4. So y equals -4 squared plus 4, -4 plus 4. Holy, that's a lot of 4s. So I have a 4, and if I put all that in my calculator, I'm going to get a 4 out. Okay, so now let's go ahead and graph it. Okay, I'm starting at my origin, 0, 0. And then from there, I'm going to go left or right and then up or down. Okay, so first one is 0, 4. So I'm starting at 0, I'm going up to 4. And now -1, +1, -2, 0, -3, +1, -4, up 4. Okay, there's my parabola. I'm looking, it looks like it's crossing the x-axis in one spot. That spot is right there, and then I'm going to double check. I'm looking at it. It looks like a -2, but now I'm going to look for my y that equals 0. So here's my y that equals 0, so my x is going to be a -2. So I'm going to say x equals -2, and it's just that one spot, so we only need that one number. Okay, let's look at our last one. The equation y equals -2x squared plus 4x represents the height y of a flying disc. So y is the height, x seconds after it is tossed. They want to know when will it return to the ground. So they're telling us that y is the height and x is time. So I'm just going to write height, if I can, by my y, and time by my x. Okay, we're still going to use this right here as our a, our b, and our c. So I'm going to say a equals -2. B equals, remember B is with our x value, and because B has a 4 with our x value, our B is a 4. We don't have a C, so we're going to use our C as a 0, okay? If it's not there, it's going to be a 0, but you don't really need it for the formula we're using, because remember, it's opposite B divided by 2 times A. There's not even a C in there, but if there was, then I would just put 0 in that spot. Okay, right now B is a +4, so I'm going to make it a -4, divided by 2 times my A, which is -2. So now I have -4 on top, -4 on the bottom, and that gives me a +1. So my 1 goes in the middle. I'm going to do 0, -1, and then 2, 3. Okay. I'm going to start with my top 3. I'm going to start with my 1 in the middle, my axis of symmetry, and then I'm going to move up because those are all positive. If I went down and I had the 0 and the -1, it would be fine, but I would just have to put it in my calculator a little bit differently with that negative. So I'm going to say y equals -2 parenthesis 1 squared plus 4 parenthesis 1. If I do that, I'm getting a 0. Nope, sorry, I'm getting a 2. Now I'm going to say y equals -2 parenthesis 2 squared plus 4 parenthesis 2. If I put all that in, I get a 0. Nope, I put that in the wrong spot. Sorry, I have my key set up differently than I have this one. Okay, because we put it across, because we had that 2 in our parenthesis, we want our 0 right here. Okay, and then y equals, I'm going to say -2 parenthesis 3 squared plus 4 parenthesis 3. Okay, when I put a 3 in there, I get a -6. So those two are going to be zeros, and this is going to be a -6. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and graph that. Okay, so my first one is -3, -6. So I'm going to go -3. Sorry, it's not -3. It's going to be a +3, -6. So +3 down to -6. +2, staying at 0. 1 and up 2. 0, 0, and -1, -6. Okay, so this looks like a nice little parabola. So that looks good. Okay, when I look, I see it's crossing the axis right here and right here. So it's crossing in two places. You can barely see when I use yellow. How about those ones? So it's crossing in those two places. To me, it looks like 0 and a positive 2, but let's double check that with our table. Okay, here's 0. So with that is a positive 2. Here's 0, and with that is a 0. So I'm going to say x equals, oops, that's a little bit thick. Let's say x equals 2 and x equals 0, okay? Word problems need answers with words. It wants to know when will it return to the ground. So if you have a flying disc and you start, you're going to start right here. This is you. Oops, let me try a different color so you can see it better. This is you starting right here, throwing your flying disc. You're going to throw it up in the air, starting at 0. It's going to go up and it's going to come back down. And this is where it's going to hit the ground, right? So it's not going to be 0 seconds that it hits the ground. That doesn't make any sense. It's going to be 2 seconds that it hits the ground. So if I were to answer this, I want to answer it with words, and I would say 2 seconds. When will it hit the ground? It's going to hit the ground at 2 seconds. All right, you have everything you need to work on number 5.